Renaissance Center. A look at tomorrow. Brought to you by
Eaton, whose thousands of people are solving problems worldwide by making and marketing a wide range of products for major growth markets. Eaton.
You are about to see Detroit of the future. Renaissance Center, a riverfront development on a 32-acre site, breathtaking in its scope. A bold new master plan designed by one of the most exciting architects of our time. It's a plan so ambitious that it's backed by the faith and the funds of no fewer than 49 far-seeing corporations with significant ties to Detroit. Renaissance Center is destined to make Detroit's riverfront one of the most talked-about landmarks in America, with the practical aim of making Detroit a better place in which to work, to visit, and to live. And it will restore to Detroit's riverfront much of the importance it had when it was young. On this program, you'll see how this tremendous project came into being, who inspired it, and who designed it, and how it has captured the minds and hearts of Detroit's civic leaders in many fields.
In property taxes alone, Renaissance Center will bring over $11 million.
This is what the city really needs. Any new source of tax revenue will benefit the whole of the city of Detroit.
And I'm mighty pleased today to see the Renaissance Center moving close to reality.
I can see things happening right now in the downtown area that are good signs.
The Detroit Renaissance promises rebirth for the hotel and restaurant industry in downtown Detroit.
This dramatic center is evidence that Detroit is alive and is going somewhere.
If one person can be considered the prime mover of Renaissance Center, it is the chairman of the board, Ford Motor Company, Henry Ford II.
This downtown development that's going to take place here in Phase 1, 4 office buildings and one 70-story hotel is being built by the people of Detroit and for the people of Detroit. And I'm convinced, and I know many other people are as well, that this will be a catalyst for the Renaissance of Detroit. Now, the Renaissance has already started, but this will be another great step forward. But it's going to take the cooperation, the goodwill, and the hard work of all of us who are citizens of this great metropolitan community to see that this whole thing is accomplished.
Where Renaissance Center will be is where the history of Detroit began, on its waterfront. During the early part of the 17th century, hardy French pioneers came by land and by water to trade for furs with the Indians and established Detroit as a commercial base. Detroit's official history started with the arrival of the French explorer with royal credentials, Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac. Shortly thereafter, his wife joined Cadillac, and Detroit became a permanent settlement, a riverfront community where people lived and thrived. Renaissance Center is situated near the site of Cadillac's Landing. In 1760, the British occupied Detroit following the French and Indian Wars. They reluctantly turned over the strategic site to the Americans in 1796, following the Revolutionary War. It's been American ever since. The Detroit riverfront has had its triumphs and its tragedies, such as the destructive fire of 1805. The city was rebuilt on part of the site of what will be Renaissance Center. As the decades passed, the city flourished, becoming a thriving business and industrial complex, particularly with the advent of the auto and Detroit's dominant position in the auto industry. As the city spread in many directions and suburbs sprang up, the importance of the riverfront dimmed, although the Detroit River remained one of the world's busiest waterways. And the downtown area was by no means abandoned. For in recent years, many multi-million-dollar projects, both private and public, have been built or begun, showing continuing faith in Detroit. However, the progress of downtown Detroit will accelerate dramatically with the impact of Renaissance Center. It will be a most spectacular contribution to the city's future growth. When Henry Ford presented the initial proposal to the city of Detroit in November of 1971, it was enthusiastically welcomed by city officials. And this enthusiasm has carried through the project's various stages as shown by Mayor Roman Gribbs.
Renaissance Center is an economic and psychological boost for the city that is unparalleled in my judgment. Just during the construction period, we'll have some 2,000 people working at its lowest point and some 7,000 persons employed during the high point of construction. And after that, the jobs that help solve unemployment that will be available through the facilities that are there, the hotel and the office structures, are very obvious. As mayor, we're always concerned about building a tax base so that we can provide the public services that our citizens need. And in property taxes alone, Renaissance Center will bring over $11 million. In addition to that, the jobs that it will provide will bring income tax, individual income taxes to the city, and there will be corporate income taxes as a result of Renaissance Center.
How did Renaissance Center begin? For the background of the development that holds so much promise for Detroit, here is the real estate planning manager, Renaissance Center Partnership, Alfred Bolin.
The project was conceived out of a result of meetings of Detroit Renaissance, which is a group that was formed to economically progress Detroit. And after many months of meetings, Mr. Ford determined that it might as well be he who made the first step. It was known from the beginning that one single corporation could not back a development or be a single developer to the extent required to have major impact on the city. However, at Mr. Ford's request, a site search was made, and of 31 sites, the 33-acre parcel on the Detroit River was believed to be the best in the city for having the type of impact required. Following the site search, the land was acquired from various private owners, and through the cooperation of these owners and the city of Detroit, we were able to go forward with a master plan for the 33 acres. We then went to a number of other investors who were either Detroit-based or had a stake in the future of Detroit, and put together an investor group which now comprises 49 partners in a general partnership known as Renaissance Center Partnership.
More than $37 million in equity capital has been pledged by the 49 Detroit-oriented firms which comprise the Renaissance Center Partnership. It is the largest investment group ever assembled for a privately financed major redevelopment project. In the words of Henry Ford, these are the men who want to build something for such size and importance for Detroit that a significant impact can be achieved in two ways. First, by enabling the city to compete more effectively with newer suburban areas and other cities, and second, by acting as a catalyst for further downtown development. One of the founding fathers of the Riverfront Project was the president of New Detroit Incorporated, Lawrence P. Doss.
Almost 3 years ago, I had a long private discussion with Henry Ford about some of the things that needed to be done to revitalize Detroit. And at that time, I urged that he provide leadership together with other key businessmen in doing some things physically and economically in Detroit that would help lead to its revitalization. And I'm mighty pleased today to see the Renaissance Center moving close to reality. I think it has great potential for being the spark that will physically and economically revitalize our city of Detroit.
Another active participant in the history of the development is the president of Detroit Renaissance, Robert Mccabe.
When Detroit Renaissance was created 2.5 years ago by the leading businessmen and industrialists of this community, they had as their goal the economic and physical revitalization of particularly the downtown area as a priority focus. It seems to us that Renaissance Center provides dramatic evidence of the interest of the business leadership in this community and the attraction of the downtown area for economic and physical revitalization. This dramatic center, providing jobs and a tax base for this community, an investment of over $500 million, is dramatic evidence that Detroit is alive and is going somewhere.
The day your son gets his first car.
Thanks a lot, Dad. Have fun.
It brings back the moments.
Bobby! Have a good time.
The good times you had in all your cars, because the car is part of your life. Like the used Model A Ford you tinkered with in high school. Or maybe the Roadster you were driving in college when you knew you'd seen that special girl. The wartime Jeep you practically lived in. The Buick you borrowed from her dad for the big night to pop the big question. Heading for a new life together. And a new Plymouth to start you off. Then a son, and you were almost too shaky to drive the Chrysler. But by the time you took your daughter home in a Rambler, you knew all about it.
Thank you very much.
And that Christmas present for your wife, a Chevy Impala wrapped up fancier than Santa himself.
Merry Christmas, sweetheart.
She loved it. And now he's on his own. It's his car and his future. Eaton has grown up with the automotive industry. We make precision parts for quieter, more efficient engines, controls for year-round driving comfort and cleaner air, and we're developing new safety systems that could help reduce traffic injuries and fatalities. At Eaton, we're as much a part of the car as the car is part of your life.
The architect chosen to design Detroit's riverfront development was John Portman. He's one of the world's best-known architects and developers, with projects completed or underway in Chicago, San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, and Fort Worth, and overseas in Paris, Madrid, and Athens. Portman first came to fame through his innovative plan for Peachtree Center in his home base of Atlanta, Georgia. When introducing Portman to the Detroit Economic Club in May 1972, Henry Ford said, "Seldom, if ever, has an architect had more influence or made a greater contribution to a modern American city."
Well, the basic function of architecture is to provide a framework and a background for human activity and human life. Now, as far as what we're trying to do in Detroit is to go beyond what has happened in the past, where most of architecture has been involved with individual buildings, and there's been a great deal of planning done for individual buildings. Throughout the world, we are now attempting to go beyond the individual buildings to create a much broader complex involving the total cycle and the total requirements of human activity in a total environment, because you don't live in just one building. You live in many buildings, and the spaces between these buildings, and you have many activities as a human being, whether you're working in an office, living in an apartment, dining in a restaurant, strolling through a landscape mall, sitting in an outdoor space, going to an entertainment complex, all of the activities that one might desire on an around-the-clock basis. This is what we're trying to do with Renaissance Center in Detroit, is to have a very animated complex where people are involved in a 24-hour arena to create all of the needs and the desires of the things that we find that people enjoy in environmental complexes. Here in Peachtree Center, we've attempted to create a new kind of environmental condition within the urban area. We've tried to bring into a central city scene areas of tranquility, and we've tried to merchandise the central city scene. In this merchandising, for instance, you can take one thing like food. We don't just put restaurants here. We try to analyze people's habits relative to food to get a great variety of restaurants. We often say that we have everything here from the hot dog to the gourmet restaurant. You see, variety has a lot to do with mental happiness. And throughout the complex, we try to create as much variety and animation and activity. And this is what we hope to accomplish in Renaissance Center.
Phase C1 of the development, which comprises 13 acres, includes the 70-story hotel building surrounded by 4 39-story office buildings. Construction is currently underway in this facility. The hotel building is convention-oriented for its own use and will accommodate 3,000 people in terms of convention. It includes 1,500 rooms, several restaurants, one of which will be rotating rooftop, to be served by an exterior glass-shafted elevator. The office buildings will contain approximately 2.5 million square feet, also served by exterior-mounted elevators. The entire structure is built through a 4-level podium, which comprises 2 lower levels of enclosed parking and 2 upper levels of retail space. The retail space will have shops, theaters, restaurants, other activities which we believe will lead to a 24-hour operation in the development. Between the commercial phase of C1 and the river, we intend to construct residential units which should come on the market at about the same time the entire commercial development is completed. We're now forecasting completion of the first office tower by late 1975, with the additional offices to come on stream in 3 to 4 month intervals. The last office building to be completed at the same time as the hotel, so that the entire development should be completed by late 1976. The site itself is bounded by Jefferson on the north, the river to the south, Randolph on the west, and Beaubien Street on the east.
How Renaissance Center fits in with Detroit's own future master plan is discussed by the director of the City Planning Commission, Charles Blessing.
I would like to think of the Renaissance Center in relation to metropolitan Detroit just as one would think of the heart of Paris in relation to that region of 14 million people in France. Actually, any region to be great must have a great heart. It must have a cultural heart, a business heart, a soul, you might say, that reaches out to every person in the entire region, as far as 50 or 60 or 75 miles. Now, I think the Renaissance is going to put Detroit in the forefront in this respect among American cities. It is one of the largest and most dramatic of such projects of recovery of the heart, the central business area of a region that the country as a whole has experienced.
From the Chamber of Commerce point of view, the economics of it is what makes greatest sense, because it stimulates much confidence in the metropolitan Detroit marketplace and has a rippling effect that spills over into other kinds of development. This 30 acres involves some $500 million. The economist will describe for you the multiplier effect of that $500 million 2.5 times, which means that in the next 10 years there will be in excess of $1 billion invested in construction, invested in jobs, and invested in making the riverfront what Dr. Konstantinos Doxiadis has long said, the most beautiful riverfront site in the whole world yet to be developed.
Putting 2.5 million square feet of office space on the market in such a short period of time is quite an undertaking, and we've been asked whether it will have an adverse effect on other office buildings in Detroit. We think that the effect will, in a short term, of course, create relocation of a number of currently downtown tenants from other office buildings. But we look at the project as being a long-term project which will have a positive effect on the total market. Needless to say, with new construction, our rentals will be at the top side of the market, and as tenants relocate, it should create the effect of broadening the rental base for Detroit. In other words, as space becomes available in existing office buildings in Detroit, the landlords will have the choice of either upgrading their space or of lowering their rental rates. So we look at this project as being favorable in terms of broadening the entire downtown market.
The Renaissance Center will involve many job opportunities while under construction and when completed. Some benefits for specific elements of Detroit's labor force are outlined by the Secretary-Treasurer of the Hotel, Motel, and Restaurant Employees Union, Local 705, Myra Wolfgang.
The Detroit Renaissance promises rebirth for the hotel and restaurant industry in downtown Detroit. As head of a union committed to the rebuilding of the inner city, I greet with joy the prospect of Detroit becoming a center of activity and culture, and it is with equal pleasure that we anticipate the prospect of new job openings with the building of a 1,500-room hotel. With full occupancy, this can be projected into over 100 jobs for maids alone. Waiters and waitresses also will find new jobs available in the many restaurants that are being considered for Detroit Renaissance Project.
While our hotel is convention-oriented and can serve up to 3,000 people in its own convention, we believe that it offers great support to Cobo Hall. One of the problems in maximizing the use of Cobo Hall in previous years has been the lack of sufficient good hotel space. So we believe with a new hotel in close proximity to Cobo that it will enable Detroit to attract major conventions into the city. The route from the development to Cobo Hall will probably be gained by a people mover system, and while this route has not been firmly fixed in terms of its location, we do know, in working with other people in the city who are interested in that type of transportation, that it can move either south along the waterfront between the two developments or north through the central business district and still tie the two developments together.
We look upon Renaissance Center as increasing evidence of the revitalization and the continued vitality of the growth of the downtown area. Certainly it's the most visible evidence we've seen in some time. Perhaps more importantly, from a convention standpoint, it adds 1,400 brand new sleeping rooms to a total convention package that by 1977 will involve over 10,000 sleeping rooms available for convention purposes. The central 70-story hotel in that Renaissance Center development will also bring with it a new facility capable of handling conventions of the intermediate size that presently can't be accommodated in Detroit. To us, it's a total very great plus package for this area.
There are any number of financial and social advantages for Detroit in Renaissance Center. This from a veteran member of the Detroit Common Council, Nicholas Hood.
The Renaissance Center is going to mean at least $11 million in new tax revenue. This is what the city really needs, and this is going to not only benefit downtown Detroit, but any new source of tax revenue will benefit the whole of the city of Detroit. It's also going to be a great center of activity. It is proposed that the boblo boats, for example, will be moved to the Renaissance Center, and that means that 60,000 persons a season will be going through that area, taking advantage of the shops, and having a mixture there of all kinds of ethnic, racial, religious groups.
Well, I can't wait until the Renaissance Center is completed because I just feel it's such an exciting concept. I particularly feel that way because I've been in the downtown area for so long, and now I feel that we have the catalyst that will really make us grow. And I can see things happening right now in the downtown area that are good signs. For instance, before the Renaissance Center was announced, why, I had a lot of feeling that from our people that are down here that maybe we ought to look elsewhere. But now I think they're really looking at themselves and realizing that this is a good place to be, and it's going to be a better place to be when it's finished. So for my part, I wish I could get out there tomorrow and help make it come to pass quickly. It's going to be hard to wait.
I think the Renaissance Project has great significance for the city of Detroit in the sense that it marks a significant commitment on the part of industrialists and people in and outside of our city in an effort to rebuild our city, to turn it around, and to again make Detroit the great city that it once was. I am fully supportive of Renaissance and the promise that it gives of rebuilding our great city.
I'd like you to meet some very busy friends of mine. Carrie, what kind of a house is this?
This is a push-button house. And when I push a button for the roof to open, then the flowers can get sunshine. Sometimes birds fly in there.
Good idea. And Doug, what's this?
This is a car that won't bump into other cars when I go up.
The future. Oh, it's fascinating, especially when you're growing and have ideas about how to make things better tomorrow. At Eaton, we make the future our business. We have a lot of ideas about what's going to change and how we can help those changes happen through innovation. Gigi, what's this?
It's an invention that makes inventions, and I invented it.
Tomorrow. It's exciting, especially when you're growing and have ideas. And tomorrow is what Eaton is into today. Eaton, where we make the future our business.
Right.
This has been the story up to now of Renaissance Center, a revitalizing force on the riverfront where Detroit was born and where it is constantly receiving a new lease on life. From conception to demolition and groundbreaking, the project has steadily gained momentum. At this point, the drillers are boring deeply into the ground to make way for the concrete caissons that will be the foundations of the towering 70-story hotel and its adjacent quartet of 39-story office buildings. As new history is being made, old history comes to light. For during construction, archaeological experts cooperating with the developers are unearthing important reminders of Detroit's past, forming a unique link between then and now. And within a few fast-moving years, the vision of a creative, people-oriented architect and designer will make a dream come true for a city that is ready for a future to match its glorious past. 49 firms have shown their confidence in Detroit by planting over $37 million of seed money in the project. Civic leaders are solidly supporting this effort to make downtown Detroit a shining symbol of urban restoration, a vital center of working, visiting, and living. It is this forward-looking spirit of optimism that has inspired Renaissance Center, a look at tomorrow. Renaissance Center, a look at tomorrow, was brought to you by
Eaton, whose thousands of people are solving problems worldwide by making and marketing a wide range of products for major growth markets. Eaton,